Malo Lele, Pulavinaka, and Talo Falava. I hope you are having a great morning or a great evening wherever you're tuning in from. And you are listening to Pacific Empowerment Podcast with Akanesi Kaufusi. If you've been listening to my last two episodes, you might be wondering, Akanesi, you're an entrepreneur. Why are you talking about self love and all this personal stuff? Well, it's because entrepreneurship is a mindset game. Building a business isn't for the weak. If you want to start a business or achieve something great, you need a strong mindset to deal with the stress, the pressure, and the challenges that come with it. Entrepreneurship may look glamorous from the outside, but in reality, it's a war with your mind and sometimes with the world around you. One of the advantages of growing up in the islands, where many of us face poverty and hardship, is that those struggles gave us mental toughness. They built resilience, something that's essential for success, whether in business or in life. I remember when I worked at the Ministry of Education in New Zealand, I used to get offended easily, especially when working with Palangi. Sometimes they would say things or act in a way that felt dismissive or felt racist, and I'd take it personally and feel the need to talk to them about how their actions made me feel. Even small remarks could affect me very deeply. Sometimes I couldn't sleep at night just thinking about what happened at work. But looking back now, I realized I was overreacting most of the time. A lot of it stemmed from my own insecurities. I interpreted certain words or actions as them looking down on me because I was brown, an islander, or from a small country. If I had the emotional intelligence and the maturity I have now, I wouldn't have responded the way I did back then. I would have focused on my work and let them be. If they were being negative, maybe they were just dealing with their own struggles. It wasn't always about me. And I didn't need to take everything so personally. That's why I believe building a business or achieving anything great or extraordinary requires a strong mentality. You can't take every criticism personally because once you decide to do something different, something outside the norm, you will be criticized. You will be mocked, doubted, and questioned. Some of your closest friends and family may not support you. When I start my business, even up to now, not many of my friends and my closest families are very supportive. They may be supportive quietly, but they don't show it out in the open. And it happens not just to me, but so many entrepreneurs. You hear so many stories, you hear entrepreneurs complaining about families and friends not supporting you. But I want to encourage you that you don't have to feel discouraged, that you don't have to quit just because your closest friends or your family don't support you. And here are a few reasons why your close friends or your family may not be supportive of your ambition or of your dream. Sometimes they don't understand your vision. Your idea might be too new or too bold, very different for them to grasp if they've never seen it or done it before. They might not believe it's possible, not because they doubt you, but because they can't see what you see. Sometimes people can't support what they don't understand. It can be fear for your security. Some family and friends do care for you and love you, but they fear you'll fail or lose money or get hurt. Their lack of support might actually be their way of trying to protect you by steering you towards safer or more familiar paths. And this is a huge thing. Oh, they knew you before the dream. This is very deep because sometimes the people who knew you before your dream or before you change, they struggle to see you as the person you are becoming. They remember your mistakes, not your vision. Sometimes they would say, "Isn't that just my cousin who always joked around? How could she run a business?" All those kind of jokes. So it could be jealousy or insecurity. Your boldness can trigger their insecurity, or your growth reminds them of the risk that didn't take. Or another important aspect is the cultural mindsets, especially in many Pacific cultures. Dreaming big or stepping out of the normal can be seen as arrogant or rebellious or even shameful, like you're trying to be better than others. Or they could be waiting for proof. Some won't support you until you've made it. Then they'll say, I knew you could do it. But in the beginning, they stay silent. Sadly, people often only celebrate results, not the process. But there is a saying that if they didn't call you when you are struggling, don't pick up the phone when you are winning. So you can keep that in mind. If you are hurting or if you are sad because they don't support you, just keep that in mind and use it as a fuel for you to win. So what can you do when your family and your loved ones don't support you? Well, don't take it personally. Most of the time their response has more to do with them than you. You can also find your tribe. Find a circle or build a circle with other dreamers, doers, and believers where you can connect and share your ambitions and your dreams and keep encouraging each other while you build your dream life. And don't let it get to you. I've gone through it and I'm still here, still keep going. So I advise you to keep going. The best response is growth. Let your results speak louder than their silence. In the Bible, Jesus wasn't even accepted in his own hometown. So don't be surprised if you aren't either. And that is entrepreneurship. You will be tested. You will sometimes fail. And like me, you might even lose loved ones along the way while you're still building your future. This is why it's so important to work on yourself first. Because I know from experience that mental strength and emotional intelligence are necessary to withstand the trials that will come your way. I once watched an interview with Jensen Huang. So Jensen Huang is the founder of NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is the company that powers much of the AI that you use today, like ChatGPT, Tesla, gaming, and data processing. During a speaking event, someone asked him, how did you develop the mental resilience to keep going through all the lawsuits, losses, and failures that NVIDIA faced before becoming the giant it is today? He smiled and said, I don't know how to say this, but I wish something bad happens to you. Everyone laughed, but what he meant was, hardship teaches you resilience in a way that no other lesson in life can. And I understand that completely. I've been through struggles and painful moments to get to where I am today. That's what built the resilience I now have. The resilience that keeps me going as I continue to build Tiuhu until I reach the vision and the dream I have for it. So, if you're going through something hard right now, or you've been through struggles, don't let them break you. Use them. Let those hardships fuel you to create a better life for yourself and your family. Don't become a victim of your past. Become mentally strong because of it. I know people who had very tough childhood and still carry the pain into adulthood, turning to drugs, gangs, or toxic cycles. But there's a saying, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it. The way you process your past, your drama, your losses, is everything. You can either let it break you or let it shape you into someone better. So use what happened to you as fuel to build something great, whether it's a successful business, a sports career, your education, or anything you dream of. Do it so your family won't have to go through the same struggles you did. There's a powerful quote from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the book that we went through in the last episode, that every adversity, every failure, every heartbreak carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. This means that behind every setback is a hidden opportunity if you have the right mindset to see it. That's why I started this podcast, so our people can learn these principles and transform their lives, not just personally, but financially, emotionally, and spiritually. I think about our Pacific Island brothers and sisters in the PALM scheme here in Australia, working in harsh conditions, paid so little, living in cold, cramped homes. It breaks my heart. I might not have the money to help every one of you, but I hope I can help with this podcast to help you change your mindset. Because when you change your mindset, you change your life. I want you to start believing that you deserve more, that you can rise above your current situation. YouTube is free, Podcasts are free. Knowledge is free. There's so much information to start feeding your mind right now. You can learn something new, begin the journey of transforming your life, and learn new skills. In our islands, we were conditioned to think small, to settle, but we shouldn't be anymore. You can learn a skill, coding, business, real estate, AI, anything that you're passionate about. There is no limit to what you can achieve. And I want you to know that. Visualize a life where you retire early, travel the world, and give your children a future you never had. I remember seeing a video online of Pacific boys that were playing, and so many people were commented to take them to play rugby. It's like that's all we are good for. And it hurts because I know we are capable of so much more. Yes, we are strong, but we're also smart. We can build tech companies. We can invest in stocks, launch empires. This is how we break the cycle. This is how we change the narrative for Pacific Islanders. You don't need to argue with the world. You let your success be your response. You let your growth be your revenge. One of my favorite poems by Walter D. Wintle is The Man Who Thinks He Can. And this is the poem. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but you think you can't, it is almost a cinch you won't. If you think you'll lose, you are lost. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. This poem, I printed it and stick it on the wall so I can see it every day. It is the heart of what I've shared with you today. It doesn't matter where you come from or the situation you are in, or if you grew up poor in the islands, or if you grew up in a worse situation, whatever you think about is what your life will be in the future. You become what you believe about yourself. In the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he says that every person is the way they are because of the thoughts that dominates their mind. That's why it's so important to repeat positive affirmations to yourself to help reprogram your subconscious mind to believe that whatever you desire is possible. It often starts with the words I am. I am capable. I am good enough. I will succeed. I am loved. I am worthy. But if you constantly say the opposite, like I am an idiot, I'm dumb, I'm broke, I'm stupid, then those words starts to shape your reality. You will become dumb, you will become broke, you will become stupid. You can't believe how many people I've met that is speaking these negative things to themselves. As Pacific Islanders, we often put ourselves down like this, sometimes without even realizing it. But the more you say those negative things, the more you become exactly that, dumb, broke, and stuck. On the other hand, when you speak positive truths to yourself, you begin to see change. You become capable, you become successful, you become loved, and the world around you starts to shift. There is another book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne that I read, which talks about this exact concept. It's called The Law of Attraction. In the book, there's a story about a man whose coworkers bullied him every day. He constantly focused on how badly he was being treated, feeling so down about it, and that focus only made his situation worse. According to the law of attraction, whatever your mind focuses on, it expands. So, because he kept thinking and talking about being bullied and feeling all those negative emotions, it just continued to get worse. But then he found the book, The Secret, and read it, and then he decided to change his mindset. So instead of focusing on how people treated him badly, he started focusing on how he wanted to be treated with respect and kindness. He kept visualizing that outcome, and eventually it became his reality. His colleagues started treating him with respect. So this week, I want you to repeat these affirmations to yourself every day. I am capable, I am worthy, I am loved, I will succeed. And stop saying I'm dumb, I'm broke, I'm stupid. That's not who you are. Practice feeding your mind with truth. Start reading, start learning, start healing. Do you know how I know that I'm truly healed and I love myself and I practice what I preach? Is that I made a few mistakes last year and recently, and my friends were beating me up for it. They were hammering me, messaging me, beating me up for what I did. But it didn't make me feel bad about myself. I know that I make the mistake, and I acknowledge the mistake, and I forgive myself for it, and I apologize to whoever I was hurting. But it didn't change what I think about myself. I still love myself despite the mistakes that I made. And I quickly move on after that. It didn't take me days or weeks or months like I used to do before. When I make a mistake before, I used to beat myself up. I used to talk negative things to myself. I used to tell myself that I'm a bad person because I make all these mistakes. But now I realize that I'm truly healed and I truly love myself because these mistakes didn't change the way I think about myself. I still loved myself. I still think of myself as a good person. The mistakes that I made didn't change the way I think of myself. It doesn't define who I am. Everyone makes mistakes and people make mistakes, but it doesn't define who you are or change you as a person. It is really good to acknowledge what you did and you move on with your life, but you don't spend years or months or weeks just going through in your head the mistakes that you made and you beat yourself up for it because you made the mistake. It's not the end of the world. But that made me really happy because you know what they say, everything happens for a reason. If I didn't make these mistakes, I wouldn't know how much I have changed because this wasn't me before. I used to hate myself if I make one tiny mistake. And I hope it will encourage many of our people because in the Pacific, they usually shame you or punish you and all these things for your mistakes that you make. But it doesn't really define who you are. You make your mistakes, yes, and you acknowledge it. You forgive yourself, you apologize to whoever you hurt, and you move on. When you lay on your deathbed, you won't be thinking about all these mistakes. So why would you waste your time and your energy thinking so much about it? You need to move on. And what I've learned that people doesn't really think about you. They spend more of their time thinking about themselves and what other people think of themselves than they spend time thinking of you. So no one really cares. No one really thinks about you that much when you make the mistakes. So I want you to forgive yourself if you make any mistake. Doesn't matter what the mistake is, big or small. You learn from it. That's the most important thing. You learn from it. You never do it again, and you move on with your life. That is life, and it's okay to make mistakes. When you hear about the stories of a parent kicking out their kids or their young daughter because they get pregnant or they did something shameful, it doesn't really matter what other people think. What matters is that you love them despite the mistakes that they make, because that's what the Bible teaches us. But sometimes we care so much. We claim we are Christians, and we care so much about what other people thinks of you and your family rather than loving your daughter or your grandkids or whoever in your family is making that mistake. It shouldn't be that way. Love is always stronger than the mistakes that your children make, that your grandchildren make, that your husband make, that your wife makes, that your mom makes, that your dad makes. So I want to encourage our young people, if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you learn from that lesson and you move on, you forgive yourself. Especially, it's really important because if you don't, you will end up do bad things, worse things, just because you hate yourself. And that's not good. You need to love yourself despite the mistakes, despite whatever people is telling you that you do this and this. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know yourself and that you love yourself. You are still the good person you were yesterday and today, as long as you forgive yourself, learn from the lesson, and you move on. In the next episode, I'll talk about vision boards. I have a few here at home, and I put it on the wall. So I'll show you how you can create one to turn your dreams into reality and what vision board is all about. Until then, remember, your life won't change until your mindset does. You have the power within you.